This is what we call Bourbon Hills HGL. Bourbon Hills itself is over that range. They sit as big blobs of formation. So that's the hill that you can see, and you can see this eroded, heavily sodic layer. That people can see that it's extraordinarily dispersive. If you were to pour water on it or go for a bit of a wee walk, you'd soon find that it's cloudy. It's just the water, and you can see that the sediments come out in the stuff here. So it's highly erodible. Sodic is areas that has excess salinity in it, but it makes all the particles, they don't stick together, they wash away. So you've got a structureless soil that's got no binding material in it, so it washes. So in the work that we've done, we've pulled this out as a separate landscape because it's a separate, different behaviour, and it needs to be treated differently. So it's an erosion and a sort of a salinity. So what things do you think people could have a crack at doing here?
Take the horses out. Goats, revegetate.
Revegetate with what?
Plants and animals. Cows on the hill at night camping,
Maybe.
What's that grassy stuff they spray on roadsides that's green? Sticks to everything.
concrete.
It's there. It's been done.
Right, so that's it. Alright, so it works.
Combination of human waste, treated human waste from Sydney. It's and they pumped it on there as part of a program. They did some earthworks to reshape it, and there is a diversion bank up there to try and take some of the water off. So it's trying to get major mulch back into the system, trying to get the organic matter back into the system. They also did some random tree planting, which I think a lot of them have actually died.
So the trees that are there, had they colonised themselves?
Yes, essentially, yes.
How?
No, just seed blowing in. So it's not.
It's enough for a tree to sort of get a hold.
Yeah. So you could go through. One of the suggestions I had made to them was get a pepper pot of a fire rake, which a lot of you would be familiar with, and a McLeod tool, and a pepper pot of seed, and just go and scratch it, walk away, and do that with native tree seed. Yeah, it's pretty easy to collect the seed from around here, and
especially clay seed balls would be good around here.
yes,
Yeah.
yes, yeah.
We have to have a decadal view of revegetation here. It's probably only going to be a great place for plants to expand maybe 2 or 3 times every 2 or 3 years. Right? That's the sorts of events and we have to have the paddock beforehand and after sympathetic in its management to allow that to happen.
This has been, 20 or 30 years?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Because I remember when I first saw it
Yeah, right.
20 years ago.
So what have you seen change?
Yeah, there's grass growing.
There's grass, right? Yeah.
First of all, what wouldn't you do here? What wouldn't you do?
Grazing.
Overgraze the hell out of it. Is what you wouldn't do.
But it's understocked and overgrazed. So it's only got, a certain number of livestock on it,
Exactly.
so they're on it continuously.
That's the problem.
Yes,
That's the
and you've
problem.
probably got a few roos.
Yeah.
Lots.
And the total grazing pressure is
Total grazing pressure is high.
What about if you put like reeds or something in where the runnels or whatever they are?
Well, they wouldn't
Slow
grow.
down
They
the
wouldn't.
water.
They wouldn't
so,
have enough.
So
You're more
sediment
going to do
gets
that
stuck
to
in it.
catch windblown stuff.
Sorry?
You're going to you're going to be more trying to catch windblown stuff, right? Because the sediment you might catch coming down there doesn't grow much, right? It's an inert sodic clay. Right? It's a really specialist place for a plant to
It's
grow.
like a pot. You go into the potting material.
Yeah, it's like if you ground up a pot. Yeah, that's what it is.
So what does it need more?
You could go to that effect. This was a demonstration to show that you could fix it with a lot of cost and a lot of invention, and you can't do anything with a steep slope. So it's actually, the mode is actually make sure the exclusion fencing is there, and then try and naturally seed it. It's a time thing.
There's a German system which hasn't been picked up in Australia where they actually take like dead shrubs or like just branches and twigs,
Oh, yeah.
and they put them as like a hedge. It's a 20 or 30 year system.
Yeah, yeah.
And all they're doing is creating enough shade underneath for little birds to come, and it's like natural bird
Yep.
seeding.
Yeah.
That's a really
Yeah.
long-term
Water
strategy.
spreading. They do it out west.
National parks used to do that trick, yeah.
That's what I was going to say, doing something to break the energy of the rain onto it as well.
Yep.
So putting any sort of
mulch.
or
It's just
or
that,
just dead whatever
Yeah.
trees or whatever, just dragging them up there.
and like the end point of that is like the Badlands of Dakota, right? That's a really sodic landscape as well. So it's a place where, what are we trying to do here? Are we trying to minimise the off-site impact? Then look, working in sort of a filter strip sort of mentality is a good place to start. Are we trying to, run 10 sheep per hectare up on that ridge? Probably not, right? So we're gonna start petitioning our effort based on what outcome we want, right? And that's hard. That stuff up the top, as you say, it's a 10-year project, right? Because it's got some limitations. It's not just too many roos or too many horses. There's some physical limitations in there.
One of the solutions we actually toyed with was this site was putting a filter strip of very tall grass all around this bend to actually act as a filter, a 20-metre strip, so that it kept the impact to here and not impact further down.
Okay.
What happened with the mulch you put on? Finish the story.
Oh, the mulch is actually it's blew away, or it's actually it's washed down, but some of it's actually incorporated into the soil profile.
When you find when people put big additions of semi-composted or low-level composted products, you set up a little population dynamic in the microbes that are in it. They munch it, right? Most of it turns into gas, right? So you know yourselves, mulching living plants with other living plants around, the mulch hangs there. If we mulch this, it'd go, right? And that's because you're putting you're trying to kickstart a system that's not there. So we have to be careful about why we're doing the mulching. And I think your point before, we might mulch a certain way just to take energy out of raindrops, right? We're not actually worried about nitrogen and potassium and fungal and bacteria and stuff. You know, it's actually, it might still arrive in a truck, but it's doing a totally different job. Yeah. Yep.
Righto, keep moving.
Let's go.
There you go. 0.40. It's drinkable water, really? I've measured this here and it's been seawater. Just for those who are just coming in, we use these blue meters, or we use more other stuff. This is actually, you just turn it on, put it in the thing and try not to fall in. So that's 0.39 decisiemens, so 390 EC. So I forget what it is in parts per million. Just multiply it by 164. Yeah.
So if the Murray River got to that, they'd start releasing out of Hume Dam to try and dilute it.
In 1990, when I was here, that water trough was just starting to break down, and it's just starting to leak. And the water, this was just a bare white patch, and it was saltier than the Dead Sea, just here.
Did you think you'd have fixed it, mate?
Yeah, it would. Actually, we just commented how good this is.
It's looking great.
It's looking great. Some of you might have noticed that one or two patches, bare patches, as we drove through. It's actually not too bad. Okay, so let's talk about the landscape. What can you see? What are the obvious things you see in this landscape? Cliffs.
Yeah.
Cliffs first, yes. Then what's the next things you see?
Talus.
The talus slopes, yes. And then the alluvium, yep. So does this concept map start to make a bit of sense? Okay, the coal, I pulled up here because I thought I could remember where it was. I think it's just up in there.
Rise there, isn't it?
Yeah, it's just that rise there.
Rise there where we start to see a bit of understory. Yep, just there.
That's the coal.
Where there's trees with shrubs underneath them. Yep. Just that
Little lump.
Yep. Yep.
So this is directly under the coal. Like
Yes.
And these coal seams can be quite small. Right? They're not the big. That's why there's not
It's
a great
not
big
open
hole.
cut.
So we've tested the water
Yep.
at the windmill down at Glen Alice,
Yep.
and it wasn't too bad.
No, Glen Alice is an interesting system. There's a lady that left. When we did the work, we thought that the groundwater in the Glen Alice system itself is actually coming up. Glen Davis is actually coming up. It was quite saline, but she was just telling me that since '74 it's risen a significant amount and it's a lot more saline.
Oh no, so
Just down there.
So we put an EC tester in.
Oh, yeah,
We
yeah.
tested that, and it wasn't overly salty. No.
That's
So
what
what's
we
the
found.
salt source for here, do you reckon?
The chitter?
Exactly.
So it's diluting.
No, just go back a step. Let's have a look at a whole landscape. What's in this side? No coal. Fresh water. Your windmill, which I've actually put a thing down, was fresh water when we tested it years ago. Almost fresh water. I think it was about 2.5, something like that.
Yeah.
So it's actually being fed by an alluvial system connected over there.
So is there no coal on the whole of this side round to Glen Davis?
There's coal, but not in the. There's coal, not as much coal there. It's basically, to say there's no coal is a misnomer. There is coal, some, but it's not
Yeah.
big.
Not continuous. It's
Continuous.
not in big
Yeah.
thick flow.
And you can also see the little bubbles at the top?
Yep.
That's Hawkesbury sandstone. The top right at the top. That's the Hawkesbury sandstone that you see in Sydney. Whereas the narrow, and sometimes you will see a little bit of remnant basalt on the top of those as well.
So we have a source of salt, right? In this particular landscape, we have somewhere where the source of salt is a bit more precise. Most of the time it's quite diffuse, right? Okay. How's it getting to here?
Water.
Gravity.
Runoff.
Pressure pushing it out. So if we want to make this go away, where do we work? Up there.
Last time we did a field day in here, we drove out into not far over there and dug a couple of 2-metre holes by hand, and it was extraordinarily salty in the soil profile.
So that's just through repeated runoff from there and then evaporation and the floodplains.
Lots of grazing.
I must admit, this is a lot better than I've seen it. When I first came to this, because I did some work with George ages ago, and the whole of this flat was basically one big salt mass. And we tried a couple of different salt species. There's actually a little Melotus, a little yellow, looks like a little bit of a lucerne. Yeah, there's a bit of that floating around. There's strawberry clover everywhere, or there used to be. Red clover. There's the tall wheatgrass that we put in. There's not much of that, I don't think, survived. So we did a bit of a patch up there near the house 8 years ago, and so they actually then put a salt mix through the whole of this place. It had oats and it was undersown of salt mix, and it actually picked up gave it that bit of a hit to put a bit of ground disturbance, and it was lucky that there was phalaris in the mix, there was some fescue in the mix. It was a basically shotgun mix of about 20 species, and you can see that there's some species in the kikuyu is taken over, and the kabungi, which is sitting in these low level areas. Phragmites and kabungi. Now those Melaleuca halmaturum is a salt paperbark. They tolerate seawater. That's what clued us in. I've measured routinely in there 16 decisiemens.
We ran that field day here, it was 8 decisiemens. So 8,000 EC units, so a quarter of the ocean.
Sorry,
Right,
what
being the
species of Bellambica were they?
It's actually linear.
Lineofolia, is it? Yeah. So
Grow there. They'd like it.
Yeah.
Yeah, so anything we collect in our nursery is from here. So we find that they, the casuarinas, all those.
So they're an indicator of a saline landscape. Okay, so we've got a fresh landscape over here, a saline landscape here, a flat here. What do we do? What are things we could do?
We've got one idea over here. Yell it out.
Well, we're talking about intercepting the water coming down from the coal seam.
Yep.
By planting trees up there near it. Yep.
Do we plant the trees below the coal seam?
In below, just below.
So there are some trees there already.
Yeah, so
how many more trees would you?
Exactly.
well, you're probably looking at a just increasing the density. So what I'm talking about, you're probably looking at a strip of about 30 metres wide, something like that. With a not, we used to put them on a 3x2 grid years ago. That's stupid because they don't grow like that naturally. You're probably looking at more of a 3 metre spacing, but probably 5 or 6 metres apart, so you can get them to grow properly.
So what characteristics do we want in those trees when we start talking about species?
To tolerate salt.
Yep, they'll need some salt tolerance. They'll probably need some acidity tolerance. Yep, because the stuff that comes out of the coal measure is going to be a bit acid, right? And we want them to grow. So our spacing and our species is one of the most important questions is how much time have I got to manage it down the track? Is it a set and forget? Are you going to be active and go in there and be a forester and kill 90% of all the trees you plant? Right? Are you going to coppice them when they're small? Their job is not to grow up and make a stable woodland. Their job is to pump water.
Yeah, so coppicing some of those trees even now would be a good
Great idea.
Yeah.
Great idea.
Right.
Yeah. You're just trying to pump the water use.
Okay, so what about our area between here and this slope area here? What
Perenniality.
Perenniality.
Yes.
Diversity.
Yeah, diversity.
Yeah.
So would you consider smaller cell grazers with watering points?
Certainly.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, because
Sounds
it's going
like
to keep
the
it
answer to
pumping.
everything anyway,
Yeah.
Yep.
Keep them moving.
common
It
themes.
keeps
One of the things we've noticed generally around here is if landscape gets any rest at all, we see summer growing species go nuts, right? And probably because of the way we've done our grazing, you come here in July, it can look a bit ugly, right? Now, of course, it's cold, it's not a particularly high water use part of the year.
Anyway, February, March is the
growing.
rain.
Is the rain.
Rainfall.
Yeah. So we need to think about how we manage those events to get the maximum year-round water use. And that might mean we think we've got enough summer growing perennials in there and maybe our tactics are about getting a few more winter ones in there. Perhaps.
Or drilling annuals.
Or drilling annuals.
Winter growing
Annuals. Yep. Okay, because what we have seen on someone didn't like us in the old CMA, they kept scheduling field days up here in June and July and we kept coming to see just no water use paddocks. Right? Yeah, it gets a bit cold, but I think we need a few more winter species in there. Yeah.
How would you manage your grazing to select winter things if you didn't want to drill anything?
That's right. Yep.
How would you do that?
So you would need to get someone that's got some expertise in grass identification. You walk across there, you see what's there. You say, if I want more of this and less of that, then the time I graze will be here. If I want the opposite, the time I graze will be over there.
I think wallaby grass.
Yeah.
Yes, yep, yeah.
Wallaby grass.
Wallaby grass.
Yep.
Yep.
Yeah.
And obviously it's about letting them seed and giving them enough time to recover.
Yep.
But possibly knocking out some stuff.
Yeah. So tactics are about, do I need to make space? Do I need to allow seeding? Do I need to move seed? Yeah, and the animals do that for you.
Oh, I've seen Michael places on grounds.
Yep.
Yep.
Yeah. So there would have been no reason why that wouldn't have been here. Geez, there's going to be a lot of red grass in there next year. I want less of that. Let's get in and graze it now, and let's move the animals out of the paddock pretty quick. That's the sort of tactics we talk about.
Or red grass is a really good feed for a short period of time. Do I go and hammer that, take it off, let it seed, and then go? So, well, he said you need to know what's in there.
Yeah. What's in there and what do you want?
What do you want?
That then defines just when you give animals the access, so you get them to do what you want. As I mentioned before, we all do it subconsciously. You know, we all look at a paddock and say, "Oh, I did that, and that meant I got heaps of thistles." You know, like the animal interaction resulted in a certain outcome, and we're just going to do the same. We're just going to say what animal action, what animal management's going to result in something I more want. Yeah. Yep.
Okay, let's turn our attention across the road to this flat between here and the trees. What would you do with that? It's green, actively growing. It's got water pretty much to within the root zone. What is it? It's an irrigation area. If you manage that, you could actually grow hay in it. If you thought about the species and managed it properly, it could become a really good resource. We tried Hunter River lucerne. It actually grows up there quite well. The old Hunter type lucerne.
It's the best I've ever seen.
Yeah. And this is I suppose a part of the world where some of these sites, if we ran out there with a soil testing kit, there's a lot of constraints, right? They're sodic clays at depth, they're quite alkaline, they're quite salty. Whereas if we're just over here, the landscape's probably a bit acid. So it's a place where you start thinking about what can I turn around first rather than going to the hardest bit.
There's a set of old gates somewhere that used to be you could drive I forget where it is. It's only about that far out of the ground now, and so there's been that much soil deposited on this system. You can see there's a hummock in there between. So what are your assets? You've got species here that are adapted to the site. You've got groundwater that's actually present, and you can relatively easily put a grazing management system in, run a hot wire off that fence, and strip graze it. And you maximise your water use. What are the things you don't want to do? Overgraze it. Continuously graze it.
Rip it up.
Yeah.
Do not rip it.
Yeah, take the ground cover off it. You don't want to do that. And
you don't want to overrest it either.
No, good point. Correct. Very correct.
Why is that?
The water use will stop. The water use will stop.
You just also don't allow sunlight in the winter growing stuff. You restrict the sunlight to those plants so they can't go in.
So this is a huge in the landscape. This is a hugely underutilised asset, and there's a lot of it. And just a change of management. You know, you could actually push some production out of it.
Where does the water come from? To that area?
Both sides.
We're at the confluence of three creeks here. Three creek system. You've got the Umbella, Umbella and the Nile.
So it would be okay to plant it out, or would you just...
What you're going to need the characteristics of the site are going to dictate what you plant.
Yeah.
And
so yellow box and all those plants would have grown here. Would they be producing babies on the back?
In those conditions that were there, they adapted to the conditions that are now.
Are they waterlogging
tolerant? Probably not.
Right. So what would you have, before we actually did clear, what would have you seen growing here?
It may have been those things,
right.
but because we've cleared it, we've changed the hydrology.
Yeah.
And so now we're not putting a yellow box tree, for example, into a soil that's got this much organic matter and a well-structured feed horizon, and gets maybe flooded once every 5 years. We put it in somewhere where it's going to have water running past its feet once a year, even in a 120-year drought. It's still going to happen, and the water table's high, and we've got salty shit coming outside.
So maybe the melaleuca might have spread.
Yeah.
Might have been better.
Yeah. Or at least the other thing, the grass is drawing you a map of soil conditions out there, right? You can see how variable it is. So probably the answer to your question is lots of stuff.
Okay, and priority, where would your priority lay?
Yeah.
About what would you do with the other side?
What, over the trees?
Over the
On the
creek.
other side of the creek. We're here for posterity. We're trying to make the creek better. Do we work on the other side of the creek?
Yeah.
Probably do some lines of trees, like get some
perennial.
For what
growth.
reason?
Is there a salt level coming?
That's the source. That's your freshwater source.
So we want that to flow freely down.
We want that to dilute.
So we don't want to interfere with that side. We want it to flow freely.
You could
to
pretty it
dilute.
up with better pastures and stuff over the side, but in terms if you had a limited dollar, if it's my place, limited dollar, I'd go there and really crank that up.
The alluvial area.
Yeah,
The alluvial area.
alluvial
Yep.
area.
Yep.
And you'd actually do something with your pastures here, so a bit of water in a wire. Water in a wire is the term they use just for cell subdivision. Would go a long way to actually managing a lot of this landscape. And then, as you said, you'd probably let your tree growth, a bit of direct seeding or something in that particular landscape, so you're understanding what's going on in those areas. So, priority, bang for the buck is sometimes what we try and look for.
So wouldn't the leaky weirs, if you put them along, because they've got really bad erosion at the beginning of this creek or river, would that not then start banking up the soil so then it stops the erosion higher up?
So you need the soil to bank up behind the weirs. Is that what you're saying?
No, I'm trying to stop it from going further down.
Going further down. Okay.
Yeah, I don't know.
So wouldn't you go to where it was coming from?
What,
That's
just
been
stop it there?
tried. That's been
Wouldn't it be more
$150,000
successful
trying
if
to
it was
stop
done in different areas along the creek?
Yep. So your outcome is that you want to
Help
slow water,
possibly at the
trap
beginning.
nutrient from erosion that's going to continue to happen.
Yeah, like if I own this property and I have the concern for my neighbour upstream who's losing all their gully, would it help them if we did do? They did do.
I think it's only going to be a benefit for people downstream, isn't it?
I don't know. I thought maybe it would end up.
It needs to be higher up.
Doesn't it change the level of where the energy is diffused from here to there, slightly upstream a little bit?
Yeah, it will.
As
It just
sediment
has to
builds
work
here,
its way up.
creates vegetation back, builds sediment, filters sediment again. I know it's a long game.
It's a long game. It's a long game. And what will happen in between when we tip this water out here?
It'll create a floodplain.
Create a floodplain.
Yeah, if it's only once every now and then that potentially.
And if the person who owns the floodplain is happy for it to be a perennial landscape. You still haven't told me what the outcome you're after. I think you're telling me that you want
I'm not asking
better
for an
tasting water down there. Is that your aim?
Sure. Stabilising the creek maybe, so we don't have too much erosion at the top.
Is the current erosion a symptom of current land management?
No.
No.
Land management has changed.
Land management has changed, but we still have ongoing erosion.
Yes.
So we're dealing with some sort of legacy
like
history
it's a
thing.
story. High.
Yep.
High volumes of water.
High volumes of water.
At speed.
Right. Can we do anything about the volumes of water? No, they're coming out of the sandstone, are they?
Oh, coming down the
the
gorge.
Coming down a
You
gorge.
can't see the gorge here, but it goes right.
Back there.
Right. So we can't do anything about the catchment for that water.
Correct.
You'd have to slow it down before it got to that eroded
No, I
area,
think the
which
engineering
doesn't
would
sound
be
like
very
it's possible.
Well, but where's the water hitting to run to that area to concentrate?
Out off the cliffs.
Off the cliffs. Okay. So we can't. So that volume of water was coming before white people got here.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what you're going to try and do is diffuse the energy as it comes down. Yep. I would suggest that's lots of little things, not one big thing.
I imagine, yeah.
And the little
Yeah.
things are.
Hey?
And those lots of little things are.
Stopping the water getting to the problem.
Right. Yeah. And you would do that by?
Hey?
There isn't one solution, is I think the thing that we're getting to.
What would I do? I would make sure that I had, or before I did anything to mess with this floodplain even further, I would make sure that it is a robust, perennial-based, diverse ecosystem.
Yeah.
Because I can see some negatives
Yeah.
to tipping more high-energy water onto it.
Right.
And I can see some negatives in tipping more volume of water onto it. Particularly if there are specific highly saline, highly acid sediments floating around in the landscape that aren't immediately visible. Right?
Yeah.
You put water on things, you will mobilise things.
Yeah.
Right?
So you're saying we're higher up in the landscape then? Okay.
Has that ever been an active coal mine in releasing the carbon?
It hasn't been an active coal mine, but they have mined it.
Oh.
They have put an exploratory holes in it, as I understand.
Wow.
Okay, but that would be
Minuscule. Yes.
compared with the commercial operation.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Does it go all the way around, or does it just poke up?
No, so you've got where we came from, Bourbon Hills landscape. Just goes round there and then it goes up there a bit further and then it stops. So it's pretty particular to this spot.
So you know that because of those exploratory holes that have been drilled?
Yeah, it's actually on the, because there's a lot of coal in this area, there's a very good geological, if you get on the geological sites, they've got all the exploration data there, publicly available. What is it? Keep on changing the name. Geoscience, no, what is it? New South Wales Geological Survey.
Yeah, if you just type in New South Wales geology maps, it'll get you to the site. You can look at the maps at different scales.
And then you can get further down to see the reports and actually the mineralogical maps which are on there actually shows you where what they got in specific locations. We'll give, luckily enough, we'll give you a number for that, and then you can look up the coalfield number and bang. I think there's actually a coalfield map for this area.
So you didn't discover that just by driving by and go, oh, it looks like coal. You kind of did some research.
Can I just ask a question regarding how you work with government? Right, so you work in a department that's identifying salinity as a problem and then saying, okay, well, these are all the private landholders, we'll go out and we'll spend a lot of money talking to them, doing all this sort of stuff. But at the same time, we're talking about the morphology of a landscape that says a lot of this saline stuff is coming from public land, which is government-owned land. Halfway down the slope, okay, there's a coal seam. Wouldn't there be an argument for investing some money below that on the public land to help solve the issue?
Yep. There are examples around
That
New
seems
South
like a
Wales
really
where shires spend money on public land to save roads. That's quite commonly done.
You know, like,
It's quite commonly done.
It depends on where the spot is. Like there'd be many cases where there's nothing in the public, in the public land that you can do, because that's actually the less disturbed area. Where it push comes to shove is where we've cleared it and started to graze it heavily, and that's where then the problems start. It's usually not on the national parks estate, really.
1, 2, 3,
Capertee!